All right, Satish, welcome to the show. I understand you're going to be taking us through Connect Voice ID. Can you please give us an introduction for yourself and give us an overview of the feature?
Certainly. Hey, folks. Hello, hello. It's a beautiful sunny day in Seattle, and I'm the product manager for Amazon Connect Voice ID. It's a new feature that we launched earlier this week, and it's going to be a game changer in the contact center experience in how agents authenticate callers.
So, what made you go, I think they need voice ID? Why voice ID?
Yeah, so if you think about, how many times we talk to agents for any, say you talk to a bank and you want to transfer money from one account to another, like the first thing they ask is, hey, what's your fourth grade teacher's last name? It's probably like the last thing I remember, but we still do this process. It's so repetitive, and it's not a it's a poor experience for callers. And if you think for agents, it's just very frustrating and repetitive that they have to go through this again and again with every single caller. And that is the reason we launched Voice ID. It's a new machine learning powered voice authentication and fraud risk reduction capability for Amazon Connect. And what is unique about it is that it uses machine learning to analyze the caller's voice characteristics and then makes a determination of whether or not the caller is authenticated. And it does all of this without requiring the caller to say anything specific. So just as you and I are talking to each other, Voice ID can just use that audio as just the natural conversation that we are having in order to authenticate you. And because it does this so seamlessly, callers wouldn't even know that what they're doing is authenticating.
Yeah, Priya's hanging out in chat, and she's saying, I don't even remember my fourth grade teacher's name. You know what, Satish, have you even considered that if you add this feature to the world, how am I going to remember my first pet name? And how am I going to remember my,
It's the only way.
Right?
Exactly.
So you kind of been talking about what's in it for the end customer. So contact centers, why do they need voice ID?
So contact centers need voice ID just for improving. My main reason is for improving the security of the authentication process. If you think about it, the way contact centers authenticate callers is by asking agents personal credentials, and things like, and if you're asking about like where you lived or what your address was 5 years ago, those are things you can easily obtain by like a simple search on Google. It's so easy to find that information. And fraudsters these days are getting more and more sophisticated. They are using social engineering and phishing attacks to gather this information from other people and use that to impersonate you in a call center. And that itself is like it's a big thing, and it impacts the security of operations. And if you think about it from the lens of authentication, that we feel that the three pillars of security, which is based on authentication based on something something you have, and something you are. Something is these knowledge-based questions like your social security number. Something you have, it's one-time password. How many times you may have asked, you may have been sent a one-time password that you have to enter again. And something you are is your is doesn't exist right now, and voice ID adds that third pillar of security for a contact center operation. And so if you think of a bank or financial institution where where you want to have the highest level of security, you want to use all three, and voice ID helps address that gap as a third pillar of authentication.
Okay.
Yeah, wow, I hadn't even acknowledged that until you mentioned that, but you're right. This is seamless MFA, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
like you just through the natural course of even collecting a minimum amount of information needed to open a conversation with the customer, you now can easily prove the knowledge factor and the identity factor and have much greater assurance that they are who they say they are. That's wow. Okay. I am just like either really slow today or this is incredible, Melissa. This is like
Yeah. No way. I think that's what you were saying earlier. You won't want to go back. It's like once you experience this
Exactly.
vibe, Forget your fourth grade teacher.
And nobody's stopping you from still doing that. But if you want that additional layer of security, Voice ID is
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, well, we have a great question from Twitch chat. Swaggy asks, how long does it take to train Voice ID to recognize a specific customer?
Great question, Swaggy. And this is something you will also see in the demo that we will show later. But we need about, Voice ID needs about 30 seconds of audio, and this is audio without silences or pauses, so it's straight up audio. And using that, we can enroll a customer into Voice ID. And once that is done, the next time they call in, we just need about 10 seconds of audio, again, audio without silences, in order to authenticate them. And because it only needs 10 seconds to authenticate, even by the simple step of you explaining why you want to talk to the agent today, or why are you contacting the contact center today, you will be able to authenticate yourself.
Yeah. Can I also just say that this feature just has so much cool factor. I mean, forget about security for a second. This is just so cool. When I think about the times I've had to call various companies and services that I use for customer service, I love it. I absolutely love it when just like they ask me like, hey, what are you calling for? And then after talking to the system for a matter of seconds, it says like, well, hello, Robert. We've authenticated you just by your voice.
Yeah.
That just feels like magic. And what's really cool about what we're talking about here is now this is a tool that is available to everybody. Anybody can build this world-class experience, not just enterprises with massive schedules and budgets and resources to build these kinds of systems from scratch.
Exactly. And Voice ID, you can easily enable Voice ID in your contact center instance. It's not a complicated process. You don't have to do a whole lot of building in order to do it. You just go to your AWS console, you can enable it in your Connect instance, and then go configure your contact flows, which is where you decide how you want the call to be routed through the call center to the agent. And in that, you can configure how Voice ID works and what you want to do if the caller is authenticated, what you want to do if the caller is not authenticated. And additionally, we also have this new capability called fraud risk detection, and how you want to route the call if there's a risk of fraud.
Yeah, you know what? I can't wait. Can we see the demo, please?
Yeah.
Certainly. Let me start playing it right now.
All right.
Hi. So today we are going to demo the Voice ID application with the Connect agent interface. But before that, let's dive into the contact flows to configure the voice authentication and fraud detection experience. And what you see in front is a sample contact flow. There are 3 blocks needed for configuring Voice ID. The first block is the Set Voice ID block. This is a block that actually enables audio streaming for Voice ID, and you can configure the thresholds for authentication and fraud risk detection here. You can also use this to configure the response time for authentication. So the first one is the authentication threshold. This determines how stringent the authentication will be. The higher the threshold, the more accurate the authentication is, but it also leads to higher false negatives. This means that fewer imposters will be flagged as genuine callers, but more genuine callers will be flagged as imposters. And if you're a bank or a financial institution, you want to set this threshold at a high enough value so that imposters doesn't get through. The other setting related to this is the authentication response time. This decides how much audio Voice ID will use to make an authentication decision. The smaller the value, the quicker the response. And you can change it from between 5 and 10 seconds. If you wanted to authenticate an IVR, you probably want to set it to 5 seconds for a quicker response. And then the other threshold that you can configure is the fraud risk detection threshold. Similar to authentication, this threshold here that determines the fraud risk stringency. Higher the threshold, the more accurate is the determination of fraud risk. Next, we will move on to the set contact attributes block, which is the second block required for Voice ID. This is required because Voice ID needs to know the identity of the caller to be enrolled or verified. To provide this information to Voice ID, you can pull a unique customer identifier of the caller from the CRM system based on their phone number or account ID. You can then assign it to the customer ID attribute in this block. This customer ID could be a customer number from your CRM or an account number. And final block that is required for Voice ID is the check Voice ID block. And you can use this block to check for 3 different outcomes. It's voice authentication, enrollment status, or the fraud detection status, based on how you want to configure your flow. And using this result, you can determine what the next best logic for customer experience is. For example, if you want, you can use the enrollment status to determine if you want the agent to perform enrollment for the caller or directly check for the authentication status.
Let's look at the new Agent UI, which we have launched for GA. Here, you can see the Voice ID widgets integrated directly in the dialer. It shows the Voice ID authentication status above and the fraud risk status below. When caller is not enrolled, the Voice ID status shows as not enrolled, and fraud risk is displayed as determined. The agent sees the opt-out and enroll button for such a caller. Using this, the agent can take quick actions while taking minimum real estate on the interface. For this demo, my colleague is going to call into the demo where he will go through the IVR and then get transferred to the agent to enroll.
Welcome to the Amazon Connect Voice ID demo. In order to serve you better, please tell us what you are calling about. You must speak for at least 10 seconds.
Hi, I'm calling today to demo the Amazon Connect Voice ID application to showcase how contact center agents can validate identity of callers using the power of machine learning. Right now, I'm not enrolled into Voice ID
If you are not enrolled in Voice ID, please ask agent to enroll you. Thank you for calling. Your call is very important to us.
Hello, I see that you're not enrolled into Voice ID. Can you confirm your first name?
Hi, my first name is Satish.
Do you have your consent to enroll you into Voice ID?
Yes, you do have my consent to enroll into Voice ID.
So, what are you calling about today?
I am calling to enroll myself into Voice ID. Now, using Voice ID for authentication is a two-step process. During the first call, like this one, after the agent initiates the enrollment request, Voice ID will listen to the call until it has captured 30 seconds of my audio without silencers. It does this right from the beginning of the call and uses it to create the enrollment voice print. Now, this voice print is a mathematical representation that captures various unique aspects of my voice, such as a speech, rhythm, pitch, intonation, etc. Now, as you can see, I don't need to say anything specific to the agent, and it can be just part of my natural conversation I have to enroll myself. Once I'm enrolled, the next time I call in, I can be authenticated with as little as 10 seconds of speech, excluding silences. And it does so by generating a new voice print and then comparing it with the voice print that it has stored in order to make a determination. When it does the comparison, Amazon Connect Voice ID generates an authentication score between 0 and 100 that indicates the confidence of a match. And you saw earlier how to configure thresholds to determine the match.
Thank you. You're now enrolled into Voice ID system. Goodbye.
Welcome to the Amazon Connect Voice ID demo. In order to serve you better, please tell us what you are calling about. You must speak for at least 10 seconds.
Hi, I'm calling today to demo the Amazon Connect Voice ID application. In the previous call, I have enrolled myself, and I now want to show how authentication with Voice ID works. It can authenticate me with just 10 seconds.
You are authenticated. Thank you for calling. Your call is very important.
Hello, here is the authentication state which shows authenticated and fraud risk of low risk. If there was not enough audio, the status will reflect inconclusive here. If voice strings did not match, the result would have been not authenticated. If the caller is constantly getting not authenticated, perhaps it's time to re-enroll. And the way it is done is selecting this option, re-enroll. Today, we don't do that in the demo with interest of time.
Now that you have seen how authentication works, I want to opt out of Voice ID. Can you show that?
Yep, sure. You select these three dots and then click on opt out, and you would be opted out, as you can see in the status here.
Great. I think this concludes the demo of Voice ID. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we have introduced the key features of Amazon Connect Voice ID in its general availability. We have seen how to enroll and verify a customer with voice authentication, see how re-enrollment can be performed, and how you can opt out if the customer chooses not to enroll in this service. And you can start using Voice ID for your Amazon Connect.
Satish, I think you are on mute if you were trying to speak.
Hi, folks. Yes, so now you saw the demo of the Voice ID and how it works in its in Connect. And as you can see, because it's so tightly integrated with Connect, agents can really get to use Voice ID directly without really needing a lot of training. And the best part is with contact flow integration, you can do some powerful things with it. You can use the Voice ID's authentication capability to unlock some self-service options in the IVR. Say you just wanted to change your email address. You don't need to talk to an agent for that. And you can add Voice ID in your contact flows to even do that.
Okay. I saw Priya say in the comments, why would you opt out? But isn't it awesome that you have the choice? You can opt in and opt out depending on what you want to do. That is
Exactly.
great. Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, the other thing is, biometrics is a very, there's a lot of security associated with how we handle data in Voice ID because it's a very privacy prone issue. So we always ask callers their consent before we enroll them into Voice ID. We don't enroll them by default.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah, and
so
I
the
think slightly earlier, which we didn't feature on the stream, which was, is it automatically enabled? And I think you just answered that right, Satish. It's not
exactly
opt in because of some of the privacy issues and the
exactly.
Yeah. That is great. So yeah, one last thing. So the customer opts in or out, and the contact center can enable or disable the ability to opt in and opt out of Voice ID.
Exactly. So it's sort of a two-step thing again. You want to first enable Voice ID in your contact center instance. After that, callers get enrolled only after they opt in into Voice ID. Now, the opt-in process need not be done in the during the call. You can even send an email out or an SMS out asking callers, "Hey, do you want to enroll into voice biometrics?"
Okay. Okay. Great. That is really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah,
what else have we got, Rob?
Yeah, I think Priya said it well in chat. Time to try these features for your contact center. These are, Satish, correct me if I'm wrong, this feature is G8 now.
Yes.
It comes with your Connect instance from the demo. It looks like it's super easy to use. I love the fact that you have that confidence interval kind of embedded in that. And I know a lot of AI systems do this, but I can imagine it becomes super useful if somebody is calling from a connection with poor quality, maybe the voice that's coming through is deteriorated or there's background noise and we don't have as high a confidence that this is who they say they are. And then the agent can kind of take over and act based on what they feel.
Exactly.
I love systems that kind of blend the human judgment with some of these AI affordances to make workflows more efficient. Oftentimes you hear people talking about like the takeover of AI. And it's like you see a system like this in motion, and you realize it's actually the human is in charge all the time. It's just a matter of having access to information that makes their jobs a little bit more efficient. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Satish, that was fantastic. We're at the end of the segment here. We're going to paste a link in the chat where we would like to hear your thoughts on this show. It's a very short survey. It doesn't take more than 30 seconds. And it really helps us out because, as you've probably heard, everything we do here at Amazon is customer driven. And we want to know what you liked and didn't like about this show. So please click through, fill it out. And I think we're giving some AWS credits away for your feedback. So it's a money in the pocket if you're an AWS user, right?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you again, Satish, for being on the show with us. Whatever your team has been doing, kudos, because I mean, this is incredible, right? Outbound communications, wisdom, voice ID, and I can't even begin to imagine all the exciting stuff that you're working on right now that we just haven't had a chance to talk about yet. I feel like the future for Amazon Connect is bright, and the team totally gets it. And the pace of innovation is absolutely fantastic to see. So congratulations to you on the launch. Congratulations to your team. And I'm just so excited to even be tangentially just talking to you and being part of it. All right. Well, this was our first co-hosting experience together. Thank you so much for joining me here, and I hope we'll do it again soon. This is so much fun.
You're never gonna see me again. Oh my word!
What?
This was so much fun. This was so much fun, and I'm so excited about all of these features and everyone who came through and all the demos and everyone in the chats, all the comments, all the questions. So awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Well, all right, we will be here next week, same time, same place. Mark your calendars because there's always something exciting happening at AWS. All right, that's it. Have a great weekend, and signing off. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.